Story 1. The Tap on the Tent. This first one was told to me by a guy named Tom. He used to work construction and loved the outdoors, the kind of man who could point out every constellation on a clear night. One summer, he and his girlfriend Sarah went camping on a stretch of state land outside a small town. It wasn't a popular site, just a flat clearing beside an old logging road and a creek you could hear, but not see from the tent. They set up early, cooked dinner, and sat by the fire until the embers turned into orange coals. The night smelled like wet pine and fried bacon. Around 10, they zipped up the tent and turned the lantern low. They were both tired, the kind of tired that makes you trust the dark. Tom fell asleep first. Sarah said later she woke up because she felt the tent move, like something small had pressed against the fabric. At first she thought it was a raccoon or a branch. Then she heard it. 3 soft taps, spaced the same way, like knuckles on a door. "Tom," she whispered. No answer. She nudged him. He mumbled and rolled over. The tapping came again, a little faster, as if whoever was outside was trying to get attention without making noise. She unzipped the tent a crack and peered out. In the lamplight, the clearing looked ordinary. The fire pit, 2 packs, the dark ring of trees. Nothing moved. She could see the logging road, a thin, pale line, and the headlight streaks of a truck, long gone. She slipped her hand back in and told Tom to wake up. He sat up, reached for his boots, and we both laughed at how easy it was to fall between sleepy and scared. They caught the sound again, a soft rustle, a footstep that paused near the vestibule. Tom grabbed his flashlight and unzipped. The beam hit nothing but the rain-damp ground. No animals, no footprints, except the 2 sets they'd made. The tapping stopped. They decided it was prank campers, or teenagers trying to scare them. Tom stepped outside with a heavy flashlight, called out, "Hey!" "Who's there?" The woods swallowed the sound. He walked the perimeter of the clearing for 10 minutes, calling, sweeping the beam into the thick trunks. Nothing answered. No one's silhouette, no flashlight back at him. He came back and laughed it off, told Sarah they were being paranoid. At around 2 in the morning, the tapping returned, this time from the other side of the tent. It sounded closer, like a person's knuckles right on the fabric over their faces. Sarah woke and saw Tom on his knees, listening. The tapping stopped as soon as they reached for the tent zipper. Then, for the first time all night, they heard breathing on the other side. A slow, patient inhalation that didn't sound animal. Tom unzipped and swung the light out. For a moment, the beam showed nothing but the same trees, the same empty road. And then, at the edge of the light, half hidden between 2 trunks, there was a small shoe, a tiny blue sneaker, mud-caked and wet. It was like something out of a child's toy box. There was no child around, no voices, no tire tracks suggesting a car had stopped. They woke the next morning with adrenaline and that flat, exhausted feeling that comes after fear. Tom walked the clearing and found a single trail of small prints leading from the road to the edge of the tree line and disappearing as if the ground had swallowed them. The shoe was gone. The tent showed no signs of being cut. Their packs were untouched. They chalked it up to pranksters, left early, and drove out. A week later, they saw a small police bulletin at the town diner. A child had been reported missing a month earlier, last seen walking with an older woman along the same logging road. The description included a blue sneaker. The family still had no answers. Tom felt his stomach drop. He felt that same slow breath again, not outside the tent this time, but in the back of his throat. Months later, Sarah found a photo on her phone from that night, taken by Tom, apparently, when he had been outside looking for whoever had tapped. The picture was of the dark trees and the road. In the lower left, where their camp lantern glowed faintly, there was a blur that looked like a small hand pressed to glass. Fingers splayed, palm flat. They had never seen it in the camera preview. Tom swore he hadn't taken it. They never saw the shoe again. They never returned to that clearing. They left with more questions than answers. And sometimes, driving past that stretch of road, Tom swore he could still hear 3 soft taps against the tent fabric. Story 2. The camera on the tree. This one came from a park ranger named Luis, who works parts of the state that people go to when they want to be alone. He's practical, the kind of guy whose pockets always have duct tape and spare batteries. He told me this over coffee, tapping a cigarette on the lip of his mug like it was an extra layer of reality. A group of friends told him their story after they came back from a weekend trip. They were experienced campers, organized and careful. One of them, Jenna, loved photographing wildlife. She had a compact camera and a portable motion-activated camera she used to leave hung on trees to catch nocturnal animals. On the second night of their trip, she attached the motion cam to a dead branch about 20 yards from their tents, aimed at the clearing. They all woke to find the camera missing. The strap had been cut. At first, they assumed an animal had taken it. They checked the clearing and found, instead, neat little piles of stones arranged on branches and stumps in a slow line leading away from their camp and deeper into the woods. Each pile had an odd object beside it at the base: a flattened soda can, a child's plastic whistle, a torn page from a paperback. Nothing valuable. Nothing that explained why someone would take a camera and leave such a breadcrumb trail. The group went into one of those practical panics: search the woods, call for help, drive to the ranger station. They stayed together the whole night. Sleep gone, fire burning. The next morning they found the motion cam dangling back on the same branch, but the card was missing. The camera itself showed no sign of being tampered with aside from the strap. When they checked the SD slot, there was a small piece of paper jammed inside, a grocery store receipt dated 3 days earlier for an item from a town 30 miles away. The receipt had a note in black pen. "Look closer." Luis told me he went out with them that afternoon to search. He found the piles of stones continued for nearly a quarter mile, winding like a slow secret through moss and ferns. At one point, the line of stones circled a standing tree and pointed toward a shallow hollow. Inside the hollow was a small pile of burnt matches and what looked like a child's mitten, turned inside out and pinned with a safety pin. He told them to stay put and radioed for backup. While they waited, he took out his own camera and tried to photograph the hollow. When he looked at the image on his screen, the hollow was there: dead leaves and a small indentation. But on the image's outer edge, so subtle that you had to zoom in, there was a second figure reflected, like a silhouette half in shadow, standing just at the tree line. It wasn't in real life. No one was there when he looked. He called it a trick of light. He still had the picture. He still showed it to me. That evening, Jenna's friend swore the motion cam had recorded a single clip in the wee hours. 3 frames, low resolution, but enough to be disturbing. In the first frame, the clearing was empty. In the second, a small, dark shape stood at the edge of the tree line. In the third, the shape was closer, but when the group watched, it looked wrong. The shape had long limbs folded against itself, and where a face should be, There was only a flat, pale surface reflecting the camera's infrared-like glass. They left the card with Luis. He ran it through equipment at the station to enhance the images. The technician found an audio clip attached, 70 seconds of static, and buried beneath it, a soft sound vaguely like singing. At the very end of the clip, a voice whispered, clear as day. Thank you for coming back. Nobody in the group remembered hearing a voice. Nobody claimed to sing. They all insisted they had stayed together by the fire. Luis told me later, on his quiet patrols, he sometimes saw those little stone piles along trails people seldom used. People would move them, he said, thinking someone left a cairn. But they always reappeared the next day, arranged slightly differently. The motion cam never recorded a clear image again. The last frame they enhanced, the silhouette at the tree line, when zoomed in more, suggested not a person at all, but the suggestion of a face in a damp patch of bark. Luis still hands out replacement motion cams to photographers he trusts, then tells them not to hang them facing the clearing. Story 3. The Road That Wasn't There. This story came from Hannah, a teacher who likes to take her class on outdoor trips and sometimes camps alone when she needs to reset. She told me this with a slow voice, as if she was reluctant to sound dramatic. She had been out for a weekend backpacking trip with a friend, Leah. They parked at a trailhead and hiked in, planning to spend 2 nights at a secluded spot near a lake marked on the park map. They arrived mid-afternoon to bright sun and a breeze that made the pine needles clap softly. They set tents and walked the lake edge, making plans to fish the next day. That night, they cooked and talked until the flames dwindled. Around midnight, they heard voices down the trail, 2 voices talking in low, ordinary tones, like people returning from an evening walk. Hannah flicked on her headlamp and scanned the trail. Nothing. Then, from the direction of the car park, she saw headlights moving along a path that she knew wasn't there. The map on her phone showed only a narrow footpath to the lake. The headlights traced a faint line deeper into the trees, like a dirt road where no road should be. The voices came again, close enough to be distinct. A man's voice humming under its breath, then an answering female laugh. They both lay awake and watched the dark trees. The light swept along the trunks and then disappeared, only to appear again in a different place. Leah took a photo with her phone toward the direction of the sounds. When they looked at the photo, the trail looked normal. No road, only tree line. But the phone had recorded something else, an extra frame, a second exposure where the trees were doubled and a blur of headlights cut a straight, impossible line through the woods. At dawn, they packed and hiked back to the trailhead. The hike took the kind of long time that makes your legs ache and your mind run hot with questions. When they reached the parking area, the ranger on duty looked at them oddly. "You should have left your car locked," he said. "We found it unlocked, the headlights on." Their car was exactly where they'd left it. The keys were in Sarah's bag. Nothing was gone. The ranger mentioned, almost dismissively, that sometimes people report seeing old logging trails that show on no map. Phantom roads, he called them. Trucks from decades ago cut through here. Sometimes the wheel ruts still remember. They drove home, but Hannah couldn't shake what she'd heard that night. A week later, she received a notification on her phone, an email from a local history group, containing scanned photos of the area from 50 years earlier. One of the photos, black and white and grainy, showed a dirt access road cutting right where the lake camp was. There was a row of men standing beside a flatbed truck, and in the far distance, a line of headlights burned like small moons. She compared the old photo to the frame from Leah's phone. The angles matched in a way that made her feel small and out of time. The day after she found the photo, someone in her community posted a short, odd message that they'd found a Polaroid by the lake showing a campsite and two figures asleep beneath a lantern. The date on the Polaroid was 32 years earlier. The photographer had written nothing but a single line on the back: "Don't drive here after dark." Hannah went back months later with a friend, hoping to reconcile what she'd seen. At dusk, they parked and walked, following the route she remembered. The trees looked the same. The lake lapped the shore. At the place where the headlights had seemed to pass, someone had piled stones in the center of the clearing. A ring, like a little altar. Inside the ring, half buried in moss, was a rusted old hubcap with a shallow dent in it, the kind left by an old tire. Hannah couldn't say whether the thing she had seen was an echo of the logging past or something that still used the shape of a road to move. It only mattered that the forest kept making space for light that should not be ending. When she sent a photo of the hubcap to a local group, an older man replied, "That road was washed out in '92. People still drive it sometimes, if they know the pull of old tire tracks. We lost a man out there once. He swore he was following his headlights." Hannah stopped camping alone after that. Story 4. The Voice on the Bear Call. The last story was told to me by a woman named Priya, who does corporate retreats and likes to arrange team-building trips in isolated places. One autumn, she booked a weekend at a remote lakeside cabin for a small group. The cabin was rustic, no phone signal inside, a generator that they fired up for a few hours of lights. They joked about wildlife and packed a case of coffee. One guy in the group, Aaron, insisted on bringing a bear call, the small handheld device hunters sometimes use that mimics animal sounds to see what responds. He said it would be funny to try at night. They were a circle of friends, all about 30, and they drank wine and told stories until everyone retreated to their rooms. Around midnight, someone banged on the kitchen door. When they opened it, Aaron was gone. No bag, no shoes, nothing. He had left his jacket slung over a chair. They assumed he had stumbled outside to pee and taken a wrong turn. They called his name, shook him awake in his sleeping bag, and found nothing. An hour later, there was a faint sound outside, like someone using that bear call. A low, half-mournful moan. It sounded like a trickle of notes, rather than anything a person would sing. One of the women, Maria, took her phone and tried to record. On the recording, you can hear the call. Then after it, a quiet voice answering it from deep in the trees. The voice was low and far away. It said a single line, almost conversational. I never left. They searched with flashlights, 2 by 2, the beams cutting through cedar and birch. The wood smelled like wet leaves and the sweet rot of mushrooms. They found no footprints, only ripped ferns and a scattered line of cigarette butts, as if whoever had walked had been careless and hurried. The generator sputtered and died around 3, brushing the world into a dark so thick you could feel it. They huddled inside until morning. In daylight, they found an old hunting blind, a short walk from the cabin, a simple wooden stand raised above the brush. Aaron's phone was in the blind, face down, locked. The battery was drained, but the gallery app had one recent video. 30 seconds of static, then the faint shape of a person walking by, head down, and then a hand holding something that looked like a bear call. The last frame showed the hand lift and a mouth move, mouth shaping words that the video couldn't capture. They turned the cabin inside out. Aaron's clothes were nowhere. 3 days later, the sheriff found his car still parked where they had left it, untouched. A week later, his mother reported a voicemail saved on their home phone, a call received in the middle of the night. It was Aaron's voice, remote and slow. He said one line, "I'm not where I thought I was." The timestamp was the same night he vanished. The call technically hadn't come from his number. No one could explain how the voicemail was on the family landline, and the sheriff had no explanation. Priya told me she replaced the batteries in the smoke alarms that winter, and tucked behind a ceiling tile, found a small scrap of paper folded tight. On it were the words, "We answer." No signature. The bear call? It was never found. Some of the others in that group stopped doing wilderness retreats. One of them swore he heard a soft, human voice answering a hunting call once when he tested it in his backyard, and he never owned a call again. Ending. They never found Aaron. The voicemail remains in his mother's phone, the words looping through like the memory of a place that would not let him go. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.